So, has a midweek of League Cup football muddied the Premier League waters for bettors and handicappers alike? City losing for the first time this season, Chelsea netting for the first time after 7 scoreless halves of football, and Luton losing again. Well, some things don't change. This is Betting Weekly Premier League Show. You're with myself, Dan Roebuck, while Nigel Seeley and Jack Wright are with me to highlight the best bets across week 7 of the EPL. Nigel, some big stories in midweek, difficult for bettors and indeed traders, market makers, maybe to extrapolate what's meaningful in these fixtures, because I think Newcastle beating Man City is a story. If you're a Newcastle bettor, you take heart from that. Good performances from Chelsea as well in midweek. Does it mean anything to you when you're looking at a Premier League card?
I'm just Googling extrapolate. The thing is, no, it doesn't, Dan. No, it doesn't. I mean, you might think so, and you might turn around and say, some people might turn around and say, yes, I mean, Newcastle are going to have beaten Manchester City, the Premier League race is on, and Newcastle are going to win the title after what they did last week to Sheffield United. Come on, let's be honest with you. They beat a second and a half string Manchester City side, lots of changes, lots of personnel differences, Manchester City going for the title and the Champions League, and the Carabao Cup will be low on their list of priorities. Whereas Newcastle got to the final of this competition last year and want to win it and want to go better than last year. For some teams, I think you may look at it as a positive, and I'll come on to that a little bit later. But if you're looking at that win last night and thinking, okay, we've got to bet Newcastle for the Premier League, they're going to give Man City a run for their money. And I don't believe any bookmaker is going to be making any price changes on the back of a Carabao Cup win for any of the teams at the bottom or the top of the Premier League on the relegation or the future markets. And I don't think many professionals will be looking at a rating system adjusting them too much. I think the win last week for Sheffield United for Newcastle over Sheffield United was more of a statement than the win against Manchester City.
Interesting. There have been one or two market movements, just one or two tweaks, nothing major off the back of the midweek games. Chelsea, Jack, one team that have just been clipped a little bit for their West London derby against Fulham. Have they turned a corner? A lot of their underlying metrics have been good. It's not been going right from in front of goal at all. And okay, it was a narrow win in midweek, but has the door just been pushed ajar for them to turn the corner, do you think?
No, not really. For me, that's not really put out any kind of statement. As if they'd have rolled over Brighton 5-0, then you could probably say, oh, well, they're now taking the chances and a variety of goal scorers maybe. But again, they kind of ground it out. Again, it was against the Brighton side that were very well rotated. So it wasn't their full strength. They've probably got other priorities as well this season. And the XG last night was 1.21, so they still underperformed that. So they keep creating these chances. They're not really taking them. The goal scorer last night, of course, was Nicholas Jackson. We'll see him get in lots of positions and have lots of chances this season and not take them. So, yes, he took one, but only one. And then he's now suspended for this next game on Monday night. So that will have no impact on that one whatsoever. So for me, no, nothing much has changed there. It's much more of the same, and happy to go along with that.
You touched, Nigel, on that big win for Newcastle over Sheffield United. A little bit of Twitter chat off the back of that saying, look, you can back these big correct scores. The variance is high. You're going to have to wait a little bit to pick up. But if you're consistent, if you make sure you place the bets every single week, and you might get a bit disheartened because you could go weeks, months without picking up. But is there any sort of value you're thinking going 7s, 8s and 9s? We tend to see them a little bit more often. Have I got that right, do you think, in the Premier League?
Well, it's funny you say that, Dan. I've done a little bit of research on this. I've on one of my picks, which is going to come on to a little bit later on. Tends to be a little bit more high-scoring matches as well. But I think the bookies now know what the odds should be on these matches. I mean, the computer generates it for them. But the surprising thing for me was that there was a lot of them in September. And then there was a few at the end of the season as well. And with the golf now...
Can we feel another rhyme coming on here for September?
No, I would say that November, don't do it, because remember, the goals go down in November. But what I would say is, with the golf now at the top of the Premier League and the bottom of the Premier League is bigger than ever. So you could run into these big score lines coming in. But, I mean, are we going to be making money by betting 7, 8-0, 9-0 every week? No. But one thing that did surprise me, though, was that there was an awful lot of them in the month of September. So remember, the goals go up in September.
Jack, anything in it for you? I mean, look, if I said to you, you can oppose Luton Luton fans, Luton every single week between now and the end of the season, back 7-8 and 9-0, combined odds of, I don't know, 50, 66 or something. I have to work it out. But if you could take that bet, I might fancy that. No?
Well, you get involved with that one. That's
All
not
right.
a problem. I'll stick to the more traditional schools, hit them more regularly, and yeah, get some profit in that way. I think it's just, I say, where'd you stop? You're holding a 7-0, or they've gone and got 8, or they stopped at 6, and a lot of hard luck stories I can sense there. But there's only one way to make profit on correct score betting, and that is to follow our Instagram account, where me and Nigel will give you the 10 correct score predictions for the Premier League games each week, when we hit 4 out of 10 last weekend, which was good effort.
Only sure way to make money. I say sure way. There's never a sure way, but the show is running at 9.6% return on investment. So let's hope that the boys can keep it up over the course of the campaign. Let's get into some picks for this week, shall we? We're going to start early stateside, 7:30 Eastern time, 12:30 local for Aston Villa against Brighton. Brighton just about the favourites here, Jack, plus 155 with Villa plus 165 off the back of that disappointing result in midweek. Draw plus 285, over and under 2.5 goals. Overs is minus 225, under is plus 175. Now, your selection here is over 2.5 goals, but we need to boost it up. So you found a way with some good numbers to make sure we get a decent price on this one. Same game parlay, took us through your play.
Exactly right. Yeah, over 2.5 goals. Very prohibitive price. So I've added in over 4.5 cards in this one. It was a game that me and Steve talked about on the reaction show on Sunday, which I very much enjoyed being part of. And he was talking about being an overs better, which he predominantly is, and to back Brighton blind at the start of the season. And that's something that we can't really do now. You've already touched on it. Very, very short odds or long odds as far as the overs market for them are concerned. Villa pretty much the same as well. And so this one's a bit of a pick and really, it could be anything, which should say will lead to plenty of goals. But I said can't be backing them at those prices. So with what did catch my eye while I was doing a bit of research into this at the start of the week was how many cards there were, especially when these two sides have met over the last 2 or 3 seasons. It's absolutely incredible. Couldn't believe it. I was like, this ain't a local derby. This isn't like 2 title rivals or anything like what normally is the case for lots of cards. It's just kind of mad. It's weird. And then also the date of this season, there's been lots of cards in both their fixtures this season. So I'd pinpointed it as a possible. And then I needed to keep my fingers crossed there was a good referee for it. And we've got one. We've got Andy Madley for this one, who's got some strong stats as well. So I'll briefly go through the stats as to why I put this one forward. It pretty much is a bet on the cards line, and I'll put the goals alongside it as well, just to say give that boost to a backable price. These two sides met last season, and there was 4 yellow cards for each team, so 8 cards in total. The reverse fixture saw 9 yellow cards, and then going back since Villa have been promoted into the Premier League, this fixture has produced 9 yellow cards, 6 yellow cards, 5 yellow cards, 4 yellow cards and a red card, 6 yellow cards when Andy Madley was in charge, and 4 yellow cards and a red card. So over this line in each of those meetings this season, 5 of 7 Villa's domestic games have seen over the line, an average of 5.71. Their home games have produced 7 and 8 yellow cards in the Premier League and 7 last night in the Carabao Cup as well. As for Brighton, an average of 6.33 in the league for cards. Their 2 away games have produced 14 yellow cards and 1 red card. So incredible stuff. And Andy Madley himself, 4 Premier League fixtures this season, he's refereed 26 yellow cards and 1 red card, which is the 3rd highest total. And he's had at least 1 game less than most of the other referees at the top end there, averaging 7 cards per game. So a huge average. He's also refereed both these two sides this season already. He refereed the opening game for Villa in that thrashing at Newcastle, 5-1, which would normally mean the intensity goes out of the game. 4 yellow cards each in that game. And he also refereed the Brighton game at Wolves, where he showed 10 yellow cards and 1 red card. So bonkers lines, bonkers numbers. So it had to be a play on that basis. Both these sides are good in transition, both quick on the counter-attack. They play with high lines, front foot football. Games are stretched. It all lends itself to cards, which explains why their games have had so many this season. And very briefly on the goals, just to touch on that, we all know they love them. Villa, 23 goals scored, 15 conceded in all competitions this season, average of 3.8 per game. Over 2.5 has cashed in 9 of their 10 games. Only that game last weekend against Chelsea is the only one that's gone under. Brighton, 20 goals scored, 12 conceded in all competitions, an average of 4 per game, over 2.5 in 7 of their 8 games in all competitions. The only one that hasn't cashed, that was last night against, Chelsea. But more of them later.
Indeedy. Big few weeks, Nigel, for Brighton, isn't it? Because they've got some big games coming up.
Yeah, they got Marseille in midweek. Obviously, they lost their first Europa League game. So if they want to have aspirations to do well in that competition, that's they've got to get something from that result. Then they got Liverpool. Then they have Manchester City and Ajax. So some big matches for them. I looked at this match as well, looked at the total goals in it, and I thought, you had to bet the total goals. And when I looked at the lines, I mean, it's a stable market at 3.5. And the Liverpool Tottenham game we're going to come on to later, well, that's 3.5 as well, and it's like minus money. It could come in, but you'd never catch Seeley betting 3.5 at minus 110, especially with November around the corner. Never. I've never bet.
We like goals and cards in this one, minus 117. If you're playing that same game, Paolo, that Jack has put up. Let's get to Everton Luton here, 10 a.m. Eastern. Massive last 7 days, really, for Everton, with big wins in the Premier League and the League Cup. I mean, look, we talked about the League Cup before, but it's just the manner, I think, of the wins that Everton have had. Suddenly, Nigel, there's a lot more positivity about Everton. They are short. They are minus 167 to beat Luton, plus 525, but this is a home banker.
Well, I know you're anti-Luton, big time. And
I am a bit.
It seems to be. I mean, the record is still on course to beat they beat Derby's lowest unwanted record of the lowest ever point score. I think the total points for the season now are around about 22.5. So they are.
Told you to be a seller.
Yeah. But they're going to be very, very close. I mean, they haven't had a win yet, but they did get a draw last week against Wolves. But when you look at break down that draw, you can realise where they're going to struggle. I mean, they got a penalty from outside, from any open opportunities. They couldn't find any opportunities to score. Didn't create anything really apart from the penalty. And then Wolves were down to 10 men and they couldn't get the win against them. And when you consider Wolves are going to be one of their relegation rivals, that was an opportunity missed. Or is it that they're not good enough? I think it's more the latter. The big problem with Luton as well, not only this season, but last season, they don't score enough goals. I mean, they were one of the lowest scorers in the top half of the Championship last season, and they got promoted. If you look at their goal scorers, Carlton Morris got 20 goals last season, but apart from him, their third top goal scorer got 3 goals. So that's in the Championship. So now you're going into the Premier League where you're up against you've got to put your chances away. And, Carlton Morris, I mean, he's a good player at the Championship level, but he's not going to, I can't imagine the Everton defenders having nightmares about Carlton Morris. He's a big lad. He's very one-dimensional. They put the ball up to him. He's strong. But Everton should be able to handle that all day. And where's the underlying problem for Luton here? They've only scored 3 goals in 5 matches in the Premier League. Just where are they going to score? And we talk about clubs that may have had a good competition in the Carabao Cup. And I dismissed it at the beginning and said, I'm not going to really worry about Newcastle or Manchester City. But a big win for Everton, a 2-1 win at Villa is a big win for them. On the back of a 3-1 win at Brentford in the league, that is a big couple of weeks for Everton Football Club. They've got new owners as well now. We're not quite sure how that's going to end up, but they have new owners, and that is what the fans wanted. So the atmosphere is going to be electric here. It's always a tough place to go, as we know, Everton, Goodison Park. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but this season it hasn't been that way. They played 3 matches and lost every single one 1-0. They haven't scored a goal, but now they've got their big opportunity. They've got to win this match. I think they will win this match. I wouldn't bet them at the minus 167. But I wouldn't put anybody off putting that in a parlay. They are my last man standing team this week. So going into this week, I've gone for Luton. So I do want them to win. But I think from a betting perspective and how you're going to get the most for your money here on this match is to bet Everton -1 on the Asian handicap. That means if Everton win the match by exactly 1 goal, it's a push. The only way we lose is if Everton draw or Luton do win, which I can't see neither of those things happening. And if they win by more than 2 goals, we cash. And the other important factor for me here is Dominic Calvert-Lewin is scoring goals again. He's got back-to-back goals. He's had a terrible run of injuries. 2.5 years ago, this kid was going to be the deputy to Harry Kane going into the European Championships and the World Cup. It's a World Cup here. He may want to force his way back into the reckoning for the England squad. We need a replacement of Harry Kane. Ivan Toney. He's going to miss a lot of the season as well. Could be rusty coming in for European Championship year. Sorry, I've got the World Cup. Get ahead of myself there. But I think that Everton, confident mood, new owners, 2 back-to-back wins, 2 goals from Calvert-Lewin. Luton struggling for goals. I think Everton will win. I also like Everton to win 2-0. I like a couple of teams to win 2-0 this week, but I think Everton -1 at +105 with a push if they win by exactly 1 is a great bet.
Yeah, bet of the week for me. I reckon Dominic Calvert-Lewin round about +170 scorer at any time. Incidentally, Nigel, going to stick with you for another 10 a.m. Eastern time. Kick-off West Ham versus Sheffield United here. West Ham -210, Sheffield United +575. The overs is -157. The unders +125. This is 2.5 goals. The line here, but surely what's in the odds compilers' minds here, Nigel, is the fact that Sheffield United conceded 8 last week, and in my mind, there's an overreaction here.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that is what's in the mind of the bettors as well. I mean, bettors, they have memories like goldfishes. I mean, they go through and they can only remember the things that happen. They don't go back. I mean, we've got a 9.6% return of this show so far in the Premier League, which is an excellent return, by the way. Brilliant return. Great. Majority of it's done by Jack. In the last few weeks, I mean, last week he didn't have his best week, but he done some brilliant work, and the majority of that's from Jack. But I got tweets and messages saying we're useless and we're rubbish because of the tips on Sheffield United, because bettors are goldfish. They forget them. They look at the most recent bet.
A lot of recency bias.
Yes, 100%. And that is what's happened here. But everyone has looked at the Sheffield United performance, which was diabolical against a Newcastle side who were great, but they gave up. They completely gave up, and they were 3-0 down inside 25 minutes, and the game was over. And everyone thinks, well, that's it. Sheffield United are rubbish. They're going to get beat 4-0 every week, and West Ham are going to win this easy. That's not the case. I mean, we were speaking about this show this time last week, saying that Sheffield United have been unlucky. Every one of their games could have been under 2.5 goals. Does that mean that everything that we said was rubbish? Well, the majority of things I say are rubbish, but I mean, there is an argument to suggest, well, that's just crazy. If that match had ended 1-0 to Newcastle, this line would have been -125, not +125. The fact is, being 8-0, everyone's +120. And you've got to remember, this line opened up at +130. So it was even bigger. The money's sort of coming slightly towards it, and it is ridiculous. So what I did is I went through the last 20 matches in the Premier League, the biggest deficits, the biggest wins in the Premier League. Man United beat Ipswich 9-0, and the following week, Ipswich lost 2-0. There's been 16 of the 20 matches where unders have cashed the following week.
Great stat.
It's that great American football. An article compiler said to me years ago, if a team has a complete wipeout in the American football, wins the team 50-0 or 60-0 or something, the following week you get with the other team on the spread because they work so hard on their defense, and that never happens. Lightning never strikes twice. And when you look at these results, the amount of 1-0s the following week, 4 of them have won 1-0. Tottenham beat Wigan 9-1 the following week. Wigan won 1-0. Man United beat Arsenal 8-2 the following week. Arsenal won 1-0. Everton beat Sunderland 7-1 the following week. Sunderland won 1-0. Blackburn beat Sheffield Wednesday 7-2 the following week. Sheffield Wednesday won 1-0. It doesn't happen. And the other thing I like about this bet is I've been very lucky and fortunate enough over the years to go to West Ham. A lot of friends who have season tickets. John Wright has given me 2 season tickets. Who was with us, a cricket guy who's going to be doing some stuff on the World Cup. He's given me his tickets to go to this match on Saturday. And I've been to West Ham at when they've been playing big teams and they've raised their game and they've been exceptional and they've got results. When they play teams down the bottom and they're expected to win, West Ham find it very, very, very hard to break teams down. When a team goes to play West Ham, a Man City or a Manchester United comes and plays, or Arsenal, West Ham love to have a game of football with you and score. When teams sit back and defend, West Ham really find it difficult. The crowd gets on their back, they get frustrated, and that usually ends in a very low scoring or a very fortunate win or a fortunate loss. +125 here on the history, on what we know about Sheffield United this season. One bad match doesn't make this game going to be a 4 or 5-0. I know West Ham have played 2 matches home this season, and both of them have been 3-1 win and a 3-1 loss. But this is Sheffield United have to put in performance for those travelling fans. They have to work on the defence, and they will. And I think under 125 is a big price.
It is indeed. 1-0 Sheffield United win, incidentally, +1900. And West Ham were very much an unders team last season, ahead of a game in Europe. Let's go Tottenham Liverpool next. It's the game of the weekend in the English Premier League. It's a 12:30 Eastern kickoff time on Saturday, tea time in the UK. Tottenham +200 here, Jack. Liverpool +116, draw plus 300. The goal line is under and over 3.5. Even money over 3.5. It's another one of those lines where you think, well, there's probably going to be goals, but that seems fairly skinny. How are you tackling this one?
Absolutely. There's some cracking games this weekend, isn't there? And like for the neutrals to sit down and watch some ones that should produce a lot of goals, and this certainly fits that bill. And as you rightly say, look to the game. Obviously, it looks like goals. Back in the day, and I say back in the day, by that I mean at the start of the season or even last season, we'd be going, oh, there's goals in this, over 2.5 goals, and it might be a bit skinny. And then you'd go, oh, we'll add both teams to score in it, and you can kind of combine them together. The combination of that is minus 190 here, which is, again, obviously miles off where we'd need to be. So I have gone and tweaked it a little bit. I've gone for Tottenham to score over 1.5 goals in here, which comes in at a decent price. And I feel this game is going to be a very similar one to the one we saw last week in that North London derby, Tottenham versus Arsenal, or Arsenal versus Tottenham as it was. I used the words when we briefly covered it last weekend that they're too high octane. I said it a lot better last week. 2 hot octane front foot sides. And we're getting exactly the same thing here. Tottenham and Liverpool, we've seen it from the start of the season. That's exactly how they play. Obviously, we've known Liverpool under Klopp over many years now. That's just what he does. And obviously, Ange Postecoglou's come in and he's impressed everyone. He's won over the neutrals. He's won over the Tottenham fans, certainly. They're seeing football like they wanted it played, and they're getting the results. And I'd imagine that the Tottenham fans would have seen there last week going, this is great. We're seeing great football. Postecoglou, front foot, goals. We're getting good wins as well. Oh, now we've got Arsenal. And they must have gone there with a little bit of fear, a little bit of trepidation that was where the bubble was going to burst. But it definitely didn't. They impressed me last week. There was a lot that could have gone wrong for them there. They obviously went behind twice. There was contentious decisions going against them as well. And they bounced back.
What contentious decision? What, a handball?
Well, there's contentious decisions.
Harry Simi was back then.
All day long. Handball all day long. Sorry, go on, Jack. Go on.
It's always jumping in when it's the Arsenal, isn't it? It's familiar grounds. But but they kept going and obviously ended up as a 2-2. So great result for them there. The crowd are going to be super pumped for this one. This is an attractive game on paper. It's always one of those bigger games that kind of catches the eye. And so I think that they will certainly be looking forward to this. Liverpool will go with confidence. They've won 5 on the row. But we know that they do concede goals as well as score them as well. So the real thing that stood out to me when I dug into the stats a little bit here is the fact that, yes, we know that Liverpool have only kept 1 clean sheet so far this season. And that one was at Anfield. You know, they've travelled to Chelsea, who've struggled for goals and conceded. Wolves, need to say no more, and conceded. Even in Europe, where they went to, you have to correct me on the pronunciation here because I haven't had the lead on this one. Las Glins, they were plus 900. They were to win. So it shows you the outsiders there, but they still took the lead. And of course, Newcastle as well, which you could probably understand a little bit more. But they conceded in all those games. And what really has stood out to me, they conceded last night as well against Leicester in the Cup. And the amount of early goals that go in, which generally is then going to mean that whichever way it goes, it just opens the games up. And that's why I think that the games that we've seen with Liverpool, certainly, and with Tottenham, have just basically been so open because there's been an early goal and then there needs to be a reaction to it. The average time of the first goal for Liverpool games this season is 11 minutes. And that's across all of them. The latest first goal we've seen in any Liverpool game so far this season is 25 minutes, and that was at Newcastle, which obviously then leaves a whole load of time for more action and for the game to go to and fro. And I think with these two sides, as I say, being front foot, having those opportunities, then I've gone here for Tottenham to score 2 or more. Son is back in the form that we saw him when he was the joint winner of the Golden Boot a couple of seasons ago. 5 goals in his last 3 appearances. Obviously, they've moved him central in those 3 appearances, and he's scored 5 in them. So it shows you that one's working for him. For Harry Kane, you can now read James Maddison. They've even got that little goal celebration together. So that link up has been superb. And so I just feel that Tottenham obviously going the right way under Postecoglou. He'll only play one way. You ain't going to change anything different. With this setup, the feel-good factor there, the crowd and the opposition all lends itself to being a complete goal fest in this one. And Postecoglou started superbly. He's only the 4th Premier League manager to see his side score 2 or more goals. in his first 6 games, following on some legends of the game, Carlo Ancelotti, Pep Guardiola, and Craig Shakespeare.
Go on, Craig. Nigel, just very briefly on this one. Jack likes over 1.5 Tottenham goals, minus 107. What are your thoughts on this one? I always think that because City have not had one misstep in the Premier League this season, it's as almost like Liverpool in particular. It's like City ain't dropping points. We've got to keep our foot to the floor here, and to a certain extent, Spurs as well.
Yeah, I mean, for all the every argument Jack has said, you can't. He's got all the stats to. Would I bet that a team to score 2 goals in Liverpool at minus money? Probably not. I mean, I wouldn't, but the stats back it up completely. I just think that it just has to come to an end, doesn't it? You can't just keep scoring 2 goals, 2 goals, 2 goals, 2 goals. You'd have to have a cagey match. Usually it tends to happen before European, but these 2 sides aren't in European action. Well, Liverpool are, but the Europa League at home is still going to be important. I mean, I would rather play a big correct score myself, personally.
9-0? 8?
No. Well, 2-2. Last week, 2-2. We landed on the 2-2 with the Tottenham, and Jack will cash as well. But I'd rather take something like 14-1 about a 2-2 draw. It's been 2-2 draws for Tottenham this season in 6 Premier League games. Liverpool scored at least 2 goals in all but 1 match. Tottenham scored 2 goals in every one of their matches this season in the Premier League. So I'd probably go for a 2-2 draw as a correct score rather than play. I just can't bring myself to play him. And I know I'm probably wrong to do it, and I'll probably cash myself money, but I'm just old school, and it's set in my ways that I can't do it. I cannot bet over 3.5 games in a Premier League game at minus 110. This is not Barcelona. This is not this is at the peak Barcelona or Paris Saint-Germain. This is, in my opinion, still in the most competitive league in the world. I think teams are more than capable of doing it. And I just think that what we're seeing can't sustain itself. So I would be more inclined to go opposite. And I'm not saying Jack's argument is absolutely right. And like I say, he's got the money. But my form of betting would be, I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror and back over 3.5 goals in a football match at minus 110.
Nottingham Forest, Brentford for Nigel to tackle for us here. This is a Sunday fixture for you, 9 a.m. Eastern. Almost a pick'em contest. I'm a little bit conflicted with Brentford here, Nigel, because I thought they were good against Arsenal second half, and they played pretty much their Premier League team. They only made 2 changes from the defeat against Everton, but they still got beat. So, you can spin it both ways, I guess. They probably should have taken it to penalties against Arsenal. What are your thoughts? What's the play on this one?
I think it's a big match for both of these sides, actually.
Yeah, massive.
Massive. Huge part. I think Nottingham Forest, obviously, are that side that could be dragged into a bottom 6 battle, relegation battle, or they could push into the top half of the draw. And we don't really know. I mean, they won for me brilliantly against Sheffield United with that last gasp winner, which was fantastic for both myself and Jack. And then they let me down against Burnley, but they didn't even put in a performance. They were really, really poor. And we were quite fortunate to get a draw really in that match. But I keep going on about their home record. Their home record is very, very, very good. Like, they've only lost 5 matches in the last 2 years at home. Tottenham, Man United, Newcastle, teams you would expect them to lose. And then Bournemouth and Fulham, teams you probably wouldn't expect them to lose in that. But with the draw no bet market, you've only lost 5 times you lost money 5 times in 21 matches in Nottingham Forest since they returned to the Premier League. At home, they're very, very hard to beat. In contrast to Brentford, I think they're a club now that are just sort of like, where do we go? Where are we? Where are we at? Are we a side that can push up to be a comfortable top 10 side, a comfortable top 6 side, or are we peaked and are we going the other way? And judging by 3 defeats on the trot when they played relatively well, they played well against Arsenal, they played well against Newcastle, 1-0. They're clearly going to miss Tony at some stage. At the beginning, they didn't. It was the start of the season. The Bowman was scoring goals and everything like that. But I think they're going to miss him at some stage. Are they a side that we may have overrated? Are they a side that we may have thought, that they're a little bit better than what they currently are? To take Tony out of their side and expect them to keep doing what they did last season, we may have got carried away with that with the unbeaten start to the season. 5 matches unbeaten at the start of the season, but 4 of them were draws. So I'm not sure where we are here. And I think I'm just going to go back to the tried and tested format of getting with Forrest at home, because but I think we'll know a lot more about both of these sides after this match here. I'm going to go for Forrest on the draw no bet market. I think this is a big price, actually. It's around about even money where you get a push if Forrest draw this match. It wouldn't surprise me to be a draw. There's been 4 draws already in Brentford matches this season. It wouldn't surprise me, but I just think with that home advantage, only losing 5 of 21 matches, which was it was the better, they had the best home record in the bottom half of the Premier League last season, and it was better than Brighton's in the Premier League. So they're a side that are unbeaten this start to the at home as well this season. They're a side, the City ground is rocking, especially in one of these matches, televised match, it'll be rocking there. And I think that Brentford, I think they're a side that you're going to know a lot more about them. They've got Brentford away, Chelsea away, Liverpool away coming up. They could be a team at a big price who could be drawn into a relegation battle, I think, Brentford. Or they're a side that could win 3 of them and be saying we could be in the Europa League. They're that kind of team. I don't know where we are with Brentford.
They've got a good record.
Me a lot. A couple of seasons ago, they were in their first season. They looked like they on a nosedive, and they got kind of saved. They brought in Christian Eriksen, who completely turned their season around because they looked like they were heading down. They obviously haven't got that at the moment. Their saviour probably will be come January when Ivan Toney comes back, if he's not sold to someone else. And I think Mbeumo played the full game last night as well, I think, which is quite a key one as far as their attack and output is concerned. So, yeah, you can't argue with that Forrest record at home, certainly.
Yeah, and Mbeumo and Wissa both played. I mean, it was astonishing that they didn't make more changes, but I think he was just looking for a win. He didn't get it. Final game we're going to look at Monday. It's a London derby. It's Fulham versus Chelsea. Bit of a local dust-up here. Chelsea have been clipped into even money off the back of their win in midweek in the League Cup. Jack, you have returned to is it the dark side or the light side? I don't know. You've gone unders on this one. Talk us through the numbers here.
Yeah, this was my strongest pick of the week, to be honest. I did find it tough putting 3 selections together this week, but this was one that leapt straight off the page at me. It's Monday night football. It's a local derby. They tend to be a little bit tight and cagey. And I have gone for under 2.5 goals here. I just don't really see where the goals are going to come from between these two sides. Obviously, Fulham as the home side have had a bit of a mixed start to the season. There was a lot of unrest that they've gone into the campaign with, wasn't there, with interest from Saudi Arabia in their better players and also in their manager. Mitrovic has gone, and that's left a massive hole up front for them. I'm not quite sure how they can replace him. They've struggled so far, and that's reflected in the fact they've only scored 5 times in 6 games. Their last 2 league games have only produced 1 goal, which shows you the fact that it's been very, very tight. And obviously the Chelsea problems have been very well documented. We've heard a lot about them. Yes, they got that 1-0 win last night, as we've already mentioned. Rotated side, Carabao Cup, not that important. Certainly weren't for Brighton. So they've not scored in any of their last 3. You mentioned it. I think it was 7 halves of football that you said, but they've not scored in any of their last 3 games in the league. Only Luton and Burnley have scored less, and they've played a game less in the Premier League as well. So one thing that is a slight positive would probably be the fact they have kept it quite tight at the back. So they've only conceded 6 goals. Only Manchester City and Liverpool have conceded less than them in the Premier League. So that's something sort of to build on, I suppose you would say. But these two sides look as if they're struggling in forward areas and not too bad at the back. Fulham's stats are skewed by the fact they shipped 5 against Manchester City, so you can kind of discount that one to a certain extent. But as far as Chelsea are concerned, over this calendar year, they've been absolutely atrocious. 29 league games in 2023. They've scored 24 goals and have picked up 29 points. No side has picked up fewer points than Chelsea in 2023, which is testament to the trouble that they're in at the moment. Again, we mentioned at the top of the show, Nicholas Jackson finally kind of gets a goal. Can he take that confidence? Well, he's going to have to wait because he's suspended for this one. What are they going to do as far as those forward areas are concerned? From what I can see, the players that they've got at the moment, there is a lack of confidence. There is a lack of cutting edge. If they can create the chances they have been created, I can't see any reason why it's going to change that they're going to start taking them. We've talked about XG over the last couple of seasons. It's a good stat as far as seeing how sides are creating. It's a great stat if you've got goal scorers that can go and finish these chances off. Chelsea haven't. So as much as your XG is looking a bit like with Brighton over the last couple of seasons, they still can't score. They still finish them off. The last time these two met, this game ended 0-0, and there's been 2 or less goals in 3 of the last 4 meetings. So I'm taking that trend to continue. This is a massive game for Chelsea as well, because when you look at their fixture list coming up, They're going to need to get a decent performance here because it's pretty tough. Yes, they've got Burnley after this, which will be another must-win game for them. Then they've got Arsenal, Brentford, Tottenham, Chelsea, Man City, Newcastle, Brighton, Man United. They're the next ones after that. Don't look very pretty, does it? So they could be in serious trouble if their form continues. So they'll want to keep this one tight and look to nick 3 points here, and he'd certainly sign for a 1-0.
-112 under 2.5 goals in the West London derby between Fulham and Chelsea is the play from Jack. Let's get your best bets. Then you've given us 3 selections apiece. Nigel, what's your best bet of your 3 picks?
It's a tough one between the Everton -1 and the under 2.5 goals. But given the amount of effort I put into the under 2.5 goals, the statistical, it took me ages to do that. So I'm going to have to go with that. West Ham, Sheffield United under 2.5 goals at +125.
Jack, what's your best play, your 3?
Very impressed. I've already mentioned it. This is my best play, Fulham versus Chelsea under 2.5 goals.
Good stuff. Nigel, any flying lessons this weekend?
No, mate, no. I'll pick you up, though, if you want. We go for a little fly. I'll take you over.
Not if you're behind the propeller.
Have a few beers.
You're on the wing, by the way.
Sorry, have a few beers, no problem.
Nigel, Jack, many thanks for your company. Hopefully the bets will be high flying over the course of the weekend. Good luck with your picks. That is a wrap for week 7 of Betting Weekly Premier League show. Stay across all of our picks and all of our content via @BecauseWeWin, and indeed subscribe to our YouTube channel if you've just dropped on it and you haven't before. From all of us, it's goodbye.